357 pounds. We're bouncing an ounce, and I say what counts. And what counts tonight is the show ain't over till a fat man fucks. I'm Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
I'm Tom Scholey.
For the weekend of
February 16th.
Spread Shop shirt.
Big news.
That's our big news, man. We have merch out there now, man. A lot of people were asking about how to support the channel. We put just a quick little blast out there on our social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter, man. I was astounded by the freaking orders that we had come in that single day alone, man. And they've been trickling in since then, man. I think we have merch being shipped out on every inhabited continent on this globe except Africa. I call you out specifically because I know there are at least three Kayfabers out there in Johannesburg. Dev the Collector, I'm looking at you, man. Get a Kayfabe coffee mug or some shit, man. Just so that we could say that we have Kayfabe merch going everywhere in the globe that is inhabited.
Here's a call to arms. When those pieces arrive, tag us. Let's see pictures of you wearing this stuff, drinking your morning coffees, storing your brushes, as a few artists have said they're going to use their coffee mugs to do. Whatever the use, man, let's see this stuff in real life.
My favorite shirt, man. It was when you were in Angoulême, Jim, that I got a cool box of merch from the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. One of those items being this totally cool and awesome Bill Gaines shirt. It says Bill Gaines was right. When I showed this shirt off, I said that the shirt non-verbally communicates that Frederick Wortham can eat a dick.
Well, we heard that loud and clear, Ed, and no longer is it nonverbal.
There it is, man. Right on Front Street, man. Using that Squaw Trunt Spa font, man. Big ups to that dude. Fuck Frederick Wortham. And the best way that you could say that is by wearing this on your chest, man. Wear that to class, kids.
And for all you new parents, we have these in baby onesies.
We absolutely do, man. Put your kid in the fucking onesie. But in all seriousness, much appreciated, man. Comics is there's a very low barrier to entry, man. Pencils and paper and time are the requirements to like make a comic.
And thank God for that.
We're trying this new venture out, man. Lighting rigs, cameras, microphones. There's a lot of investment that we put into
Makeup artists. It's a big production over here.
Security.
You guys are making the show possible, so thanks a lot for that, man. Should we talk about updates on projects, man? I saw online you were able to show off the cover to your Plain Jane's collection.
Yeah, Little Brown released the cover. Good response, good feedback to that. It's on the screen right now, probably. I had a good week drawing, did 12 pages this week. We are filming a day later, so it's not like I did more in a shorter amount of time. Progress is going good. I feel good about it. You know, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see I try to post a little bit of it each week. I can't show everything online there, but it's going well.
How about you, man? I saw that the 4th issue of GoBots, was it out this week or is it out next week?
It's coming out next week, and I'm doing like a store appearance at Heroes Inc. In the Pittsburgh area on Wednesday, February 20th. When it comes out, so yeah, that's coming, and then I'm working really hard on like my top secret project that I can't talk about yet. You guys have seen it.
You promised, Tom. We have it on record that when this thing is announced at San Diego Comic-Con, right? Mm-hmm. When it's announced, we are going to get together earlier so that the day of the announcement, we can put out a video where we talk like a good solid hour about.
Yeah, and I'll stand true to that promise I made.
We're going to hold
in
you
the
to
meantime, keep sending those pages because
Okay.
they are fantastic.
Yeah, that's called tickling your ass with a feather. I got, what did I get done this week, man? I got a variant cover done. I call it the Dueling Gingers variant cover for the first issue of X-Men Grand Design Extinction. It's Jean Grey, Goblin Queen, and they're psychically in like a tug of war with Baby Cable, with the little zappy eye and all that shit, man. It's pretty fucking fun, man. Because and I got 2 pages completely done, penciled, inked, colored, lettered, all that shit. And I copy edited issue 1. I drew in English class when I was in high school, which is to say that I abused the comma very much. Like, I should frankly do the opposite of what I do with the comma, and I would never make a mistake. But the cool thing is, I'm officially like in that period of X-Men where it's like little Eddie's period, you know, like I got to draw Cable.
I was going to say, I saw that on Instagram.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's my period too, of course, so it was very fun to see that.
That rendition of Cable that you drew, that image, I've never seen the character presented that way, and it was just such an appealing way of showing, like he seemed sort of like youthful and energetic and hopeful, and like a character that people could really identify with, and just for a character that's been sort of everywhere, especially recently, like you found like a new way of viewing that character.
Not bearing the lead with the title of the miniseries, Extinction Agenda. I'm wrapping up toward the end of the Chris Claremont run, which, as far as I know, I don't think they made X-Men comics after that. So I'm wrapping up the entire story in the bun. I found a way to get it all to work into canon. I can't wait for you guys to see that presentation. When this first issue finally comes out, I was able to put all of the big crossover arcs from the early days, man. Fall of Mutants, Inferno, Mutant Massacre, and there might be one or two other ones that I can't think of right at this very moment. But I got them all to fit inside of a 40-page story.
Man, that's going to be action-packed.
Mailbag. Hey, Jim, you get any cool stuff in the mail, man?
Yeah, Ben Kepley sent us this package, including his zine, and he had an extra set of Buzz,
Awesome.
which we've talked about. It's the Kitchen Sink anthology.
We talked about wondering where the heck that Charles Burns couple pages from the Marvel Trial Kit, like where were those published? We knew of them probably from online, and it turns out that they first appeared in Buzz.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Ben. Appreciate it.
I got something just yesterday. We're filming this on the 15th, so I got an amazing Valentine by one of our admirers from the Hand Fetishist forums in our Comics Journal coverage. We were talking Julie Doucet. Her name is Angie Phalanges. She sent this book that Tom K's Uncivilized Books put out, man. Sweet little cunt. Criticism, a deep dive into the work of Julie Doucet's comic stuff in particular. She's a very multimedia artist, and she's all over the place. One of my favorite cartoonists, but beyond the work of my favorite cartoonists, whenever there's a good book out there that is kind of like dissecting their work and giving me another perspective to enjoy and think about their work, I'm always up for that. Uncivilized put out that Ed the Happy Clown one that you showed off in an earlier episode, and on the back of this cover it says it's volume 4 of this like comic studies thing, so there are a couple other sets out there.
There's one on Carl Barks.
Oh, cool. As you guys can see right here, we just got finished shooting the Domu episode of our Akira Making a Masterpiece series. Totally epic, really good conversation. We're thinking we're going to make it monthly. The Wizard stuff is important, and in fact, the Wizard episodes, we're going to pick that back up on Monday with coverage of Wizard Magazine number 13.
Year 2.
So you guys know how I was mentioning like the master classes over the course of all of these damn episodes, it seems, man. Well, they finally released the Neil Gaiman masterclass, right? So I made sure to like jump on that immediately. And there is like a nice section on his approach to writing comics. Did you get a chance to check it out?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. It was really interesting, really seeing his process, and like I'd always heard about his process that he does. He's like one of those writers who does like a lot of drawing in his scripts. That drawing is part of his process, and how he would make these like little mini comics that he would just take enough pages of typing paper, fold it, staple it, and then just make a little comic, draw it in there, which is something like I've been doing for a while too. Like I did it on Transformers versus G.I. Joe, and it's kind of learned from like the idea of like rapid prototyping, where it's like, okay, the thing we're making here is a comic book, so I need to make a prototype of a comic as quickly as I can. So let's make a little comic and start drawing, and then you can, as you're working on it, flip through it and be like, how's this thing read? So it was kind of cool to see that's been his approach, since the 80s.
Yeah, I take away the same piece. He talked about different stories and how they work in different formats and considering that format in the writing process, which is great to hear. I think a lot of people don't pay much attention to that, especially when you see writers coming in from other media that aren't as versed in comics. And he also noted when he's doing that paper prototyping, some of it's for space, figure out how much can you actually fit on a page. We've heard other writers talk about that, the practical consideration of comics and how it's more, you don't have as much space. But also noting like big visuals. If there is some like heart of the piece or something that's really speaking to him visually, that gives you a chance to block that out. I thought it was fantastic. He went through kind of the whole process, and talked about comparing it to filmmaking, where you're working with people who have very specialized roles and you're very limited in what you do or what you're presenting as the writer. Whereas in comics, the writer does like half of the lifting. They're doing some directing, they're doing, acting, they're doing all these pieces, and then the artist, the penciler, however that's divided up, they're doing a bunch of stuff. The director of photography and cinematography and some of the acting. So I thought that was really interesting, and he told a story about, he breaks down Sandman 19 as an example and walks us through the whole production of that, shows us examples of his mock-up.
We should say, watershed issue, won awards that no other comics have won, Charles Vess collaboration, Midsummer's Night's Dream issue, very famous issue.
Yeah, and he tells this great story about editor. So,
Yeah.
Ed, you and I, we've talked about editors and the role in comics and past episodes. So he tells a great one about his editor at Vertigo, Karen Berger, very legendary editor, not really connecting with the story he was telling. And that, for the most part, she didn't do a lot of like change this or that. She was very much a supporter of his work for the most part. So it was a lot of championing what he was doing and sort of enabling it. But in this case, she called attention to a lack of emotional connection to this story, which caused Gaiman to then go back in and kind of look at it and see what is the heart of this story.
Why
isn't
are we
it
telling
connecting?
this story? Yeah.
And finding that connection, and he tells a great story about that. And it was fun just to hear him talking about Karen Berger, to hear him talking about that role, and a great writer who at that point was acclaimed, was pretty accomplished, but still was taking that input. Like, okay, I know this story. Maybe the thing I want to tell isn't coming through. Let me look at it again. So I found that real interesting.
One of his main themes in that master class, and I recommend everybody check it out, is he talks about the compost heap of your imagination, and you take in information, and it's in there. You read stuff, you meet people, you hear things. It's in there, rotting away, distilling down, and becoming very fertile ground at a later date where flowers can bloom and stuff like that. And that specific story, he is talking about a seed that was planted in his mind where he had to find the heart of what the story was, because he was just being almost clever, and really made a story that connected with the wider world beyond the very narrow microcosm of like what comics was in 1992.
And it came sort of well into, like, it wasn't one of the first issues of Sandman. It was like he had been doing Sandman for a little while, and that's the point in a work where you do start to go like autobiographical a little bit, because you've told all the stories you were planning to tell. Now it's like, what do I do now? And it's like, I saw a production of Midsummer Night's Dream that was outside, and I was kind of blown away by it, and I loved the way the sun set as the drama went on, and let me do a comic with that where the stars start to come out and stuff. So it's like you and magic starts to happen.
He also makes note of writing for comics, writing things that aren't on the page, things that the artist isn't going to draw, but will help the artist understand any number of elements, from setting to character motivations, all of this stuff that it may be backstory, it may be somewhat ephemeral, talking about sun setting, talking about climate, weather, whatever, like these little things that may not be something they actually draw, but it will put their mind, they may think of something from it. Like they may have a way to represent it's warm, it's cool, the wind is blowing gently or whatever. But just knowing that, and I thought it's similar to, I think actors have those questions when they read a script. Why is this character doing this? Why are they behaving this way? What's the motivation? And it kind of informs their understanding of a character. And I thought the stuff that's extra, that isn't necessarily what you're going to draw, but it's there for you to just understand the story better. I do that myself when I'm writing for myself, just whatever I can understand the world better, understand the characters better. It does jog weird stuff that, as you say, you put all this information in, you're working on it, you're sleeping, time passes, and your brain sort of connects these things in ways that you can't always anticipate when you're gathering that information.
He talked about something I never thought about. Was he said that he loves the silent panel in comics, and he said, like, in writing prose you can't do that. Like, you can't have a moment where the words stop. And it's I thought, I'd never thought of it that way.
Heck of a masterclass. Once again, I highly recommend it. And I've gone through, basically at this point, I've gone through every writing masterclass. There are two camps. On one side, all of this thoughtful stuff that we just talked about for 15 minutes that's the David Mamet, that's the Aaron Sorkin, that's the Neil Gaiman. Then there's this other camp of these masterclass things, and that's your James Patterson, that's your Dan Brown, that's your R.L. Stein. Comparing and contrasting is, first off, I can't keep them on for long. It's really tough. because you get such gems from R.L. Stine, like what is all this bollocks about, like writing from the heart? I've written 390 books to date. Not one of them has come from the heart, he said. And I say, yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I believe you never made a piece of work that came from your heart. And Dan Brown, who is probably like the most articulate like speaker of the three, he gives you some pearls. Like, if you're going to make a story about unearthing an old object, like some sort of archaeology, you don't want to make your main character a ballerina.
Wow. Genius.
And James Patterson gave me nothing. Zero.
Just one thing for that, for the Neil Gaiman masterclass.
Yeah.
That story that he's talking about, that Midsummer Night's Dream, it is very similar to Domu, which we were just talking about in another video, in that like Domu won this science fiction award, the first comic to ever win a science fiction award, and then after that it's kind of, wow, a comic, and it's like, gee, do we, the people within that field were kind of like, do we even want a comic in this? And Neil Gaiman, same exact thing. Different, I think it was the Hugo that's right. And after that, they changed. Another comic cannot win the award that Neil Gaiman won. They changed the rules.
We talked about that in an earlier Wizard Magazine episode. I forget exactly which one, but they did not change the rule. They came out because that's a popular myth, but it's even more sinister because the way that they described it is that comic should never have even been nominated. Like, we have a section, we have an award called the Special Interest section, and it's called like something like the World Fantasy Fair or something like that. It's not the Hugo, though it did get the Hugo, but the Hugo isn't pretentious like that. Yeah. But they said we have a special interest category, and it's perfectly reasonable and acceptable for comics to be nominated and win awards in that category alone. To date, there's never been a comic that has even received a nomination in that bracket. So take from that what you will. What did we read this week?
Well, I finally found those quarter boxes I talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I found some Lobo stuff there that I wanted to talk about. First of all, Lobo Paramilitary Christmas Special. This is one of my Bisley, Bisley was drawing this back in the 90s. It's a comic I really liked. Over 10 years later, he does an Authority Lobo team-up called Jingle Hell. It's kind of a continuation. It's another Christmas-themed issue. And I found out that there's actually a third installment. It's a trilogy. So it's a spring break story, and they all kind of fit together in that the first one, the Easter Bunny hires Lobo to kill Santa Claus. Of course he does. The second one, the Authority has like a little kid character, Jenny, who is upset by this. She finds out that Lobo killed Santa Claus and can't stand for it. And then finally they're trying to stop him from going back to collect on the Easter Bunny, is in the Spring Break Massacre. So that's exciting if you're a Bisley Lobo fan. And then I wanted to do a little bit of an apology to one of the Kayfabe fans out there.
Did you cut a promo on them or what? What's to apologize?
A couple of episodes ago, I talked about Lobo Infanticide. This is a book that Bisley does not draw. It's Keith Giffen doing the art, and one of the Kayfabers said that's the beginning of that Trencher style. I had only read the first issue of Infanticide, and I believe he's doing a Bisley riff. It's very close to Bisley, not at all like the Trencher style. Well, this week I read Lobo Infanticide #2, and it is spot on Trencher, 100%. And so I want to apologize to that fan out there. He was right. And that is the first appearance of the Lobo, or of the Trencher style that I'm aware of. We've talked a little bit about that. It's a very bizarre drawing style. It runs through Trencher, it runs through images of Shadowhawk, and that's about it, I think. So if you're interested in that style, Infanticide does have it.
You've been a busy guy, man. You have a chance to read any comics this week?
I read issue 3 of The Tempest, the Alan Moore, Kevin O'Neill, possibly the final, League series. And yeah, still great, still on board. He's getting even more playful with pastiching different forms of comics, and it's just like a rip roaring adventure story, which is kind of what that series sort of started as, kind of went away from for a little while, and then sort of came back to. So it's been a lot of fun, and since it takes place in the modern day. superheroes all over the place. It's become like very obvious like superhero comic again. It's got like Steranko riffs and like all kinds of stuff.
I've had 3 or 4 false starts with trying to listen to Alan Moore's Jerusalem audiobook. It's not the kind of book that you can kind of veer off in your mind and you know, draw a little bit and then come back to, like something as simple like Harry Potter or something like that. So it doesn't work as an audiobook for me. Like that's going to be one of those ones that when I'm done with X-Men and I do my victory lap, that's one that I'm going to like have to sit down and use more of my senses. That said, I'm still on the Moby Dick trip, man, and I think one more solid workday and like I'll wrap that book up. Where I'm at in the story now, my imagination has been engaged in a big way with the idea of like these whalers living on this boat for 3 years, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And there was a whole chapter kind of addressing that. When another kind of merchant ship would be out there, it would touch many docks, not the whaling ship. They say that they carry a lake amount of fresh water, like in the boat, for them to like drink and like live on for 3 years. Can you fucking imagine?
No, I can't.
And
you
then
saying that, I was like, after 2 weeks, is that just the most rancid?
That's what I'm saying. Like what we know about like stagnant water. How do you prevent it from being stagnant? Why do you even have to be out there for 3 fucking years? I might have like zoned out at the part where he's describing that part, but I don't think, at least at the point that I'm at in the story now, that he's mentioning like the reason why they're out there. What I'm imagining is they're out there and they're capturing these whales and they are just like whittling them down and taking all their harvestable stuff, and they're just continuously doing that. They're like, we're not coming back until the trip is not profitable until we have like 2 tons worth of spermaceti or something. Like I just don't know. It's like 3. How about a year and a half? You know what I'm saying? But 3 years, it's wild.
It sounds like your Kubert School stories. Kind of, you know, just all these guys stuck in this.
I have a couple more things I found from the quarter bins.
Yeah, what you get?
So, a couple issues of the Boing Boing zine.
Yes.
These are for you, Ed.
Oh, my man. Thank you very much, dude.
So, the quarter boxes, there are about 50 of them. They're at the New Dimension in Pittsburgh Mills. And any Kayfabers that are watching this, if your store has dollar bins, 50-cent boxes, whatever, post them in the comments, because I know there are a lot of people that are into that kind of like weird bin diving. So if you have a good store for that, I've seen some great pics on Instagram of stores around the country. Share that stuff.
Yeah, Boing Boing was a big proponent of my work and did a lot to promote my stuff over the years, man. First with like reviewing my comics, and then they gave me like a weekly piece of real estate to initially publish Hip Hop Family Tree. But when it started out, it was a zine, even smaller than this with like less production value. And talking to Mark Frauenfelder, the main editor, his whole impetus for creating the zine was I wanted free shit. You make a
Smart.
zine, you solicit for free stuff, you're going to be able to get a lot of cool shit in the mail to review and all of that sort of a thing.
You guys watch anything this week?
I checked out, I've been watching Punisher. Season 2 of Punisher's come out, and I've been watching an episode or 2 of that before bed, and I think it's really good. But they solved something that I was like really curious about to see like when they would go into this thing, because it kind of works in comics where all of these like established characters are kind of stuck in like their gimmick. You know, like Spider-Man is always going to be like a civilian who like needs to figure out how to get money to fill his prescriptions, but then he's a superhero. When you have this like live action thing, you can only have this guy kind of like crying about his wife and kids and doing fucked up shit like in response to that for so long, or
Maybe
else
you've never seen Bill Bixby's Hulk.
yeah, right, exactly. So like I think they solved that pretty well with what I've seen in season 2 so far, man. So it's pretty fun, man. What did you see?
I saw Skate Kitchen, which is about these skateboarders in New York City. These girl skateboarders, they're like 18, 20-ish, you know, like coming of age story. And I enjoyed it a lot. The skateboarding in it was pretty impressive. I think it was shot with several of the actresses are real skateboarders. And it was the second movie that I've seen like this that stars a female protagonist, and the storytelling feels different. They're both, I saw 8th grade this past year, and they're both sort of, they have a sense of something's going wrong. You know, something's going to happen here, something's going to go wrong, and it doesn't exactly, and it's a really different depiction of conflict. and I found it very entertaining and quite different. It reminds me a lot of like whenever I started reading indie comics or something, and it was like the sensibility was no longer we gotta have a fist fight, we've got to do this thing, and much more sort of character-based storytelling. But cool skateboarding was the reason I went and saw it, and it
Of course.
held up pretty good. It was good because the one character, she runs away from home and joins this kind of like gang of skateboarding girls and gets progressively better, and you can see her getting better as the movie goes on, which was pretty fun.
You catch anything?
Yeah, I mean, well, Netflix has been rolling out all this like Orson Welles content.
Yeah.
And so it was I watched again the They'll Love Me When I'm Dead, which is the documentary. You guys saw it?
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
know it, but
yeah, it's really good about his unfinished movie, The Other Side of the Wind. But then that leads you to where Peter Bogdanovich finishes that, and then it also like leads you to all these suggestions. So I finally saw The Magnificent Ambersons, which I'd never seen before, and just like really really great. And it's like they talk about it as being sort of this compromised masterpiece because he like the edit that we see is not his edit, and it does it has such a promising start and then sort of fizzles as it goes on. But just really fascinated with Wells lately, and just like as a creator and as sort of a maybe troubled personality, maybe not a great person to have in your life, but a great person to sort of admire his work from afar.
it's amazing how evergreen his work is because it feels more relevant now than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it deals with media and mass media and our responses to it and inability maybe to process it or information once it's been filtered through mass media. So I'm glad to see him continuing to be spotlighted, and I don't know, I think there's a lot to take from his work. I'm a big fan, big influence on the way I think about telling stories.
Should we tell the Kayfabers about some of the stuff that's coming up this next coming week, man? The Palmer's Picks, that should be out on Tuesday. I believe it's going to be an Eddie Campbell episode.
Yeah, we'll get into Bacchus, get into Alex, some of his autobio work, and look at a really interesting voice in comics. A guy that was doing a lot of stuff that I think now you see more of, but when he started, it was a very, very unique voice and unique approach to comics.
And Wednesday on the Show and Tell, there's a good one. One that's near and dear to our heart, man. About 24-hour comics, man.
Yeah, we do a little bit of digging into the history of comics and the history of 24-hour comics.
It sort of cycles back to the Neil Gaiman Masterclass because one of the 24-hour mini comics that we show off is a comic that Neil Gaiman produced on his own in a 24-hour span. It ultimately saw the light of day published in the back of an issue of Cerebus, and we get to show that off a little bit. Well, that's been this Kayfabe Weekly Shoot. My name's Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
I'm Tom Scholey.
Visit the spread shop in the link below. All of our social media contacts and information are down there as well. Me, Tom, and Jim have to get back to working on our comics, but you Kayfabers know what your marching orders are. Tell them, Jim.
Buy t-shirts, show those t-shirts off, and read more comics.